Was that not what I was doing? Horse! 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 Aggro! Okay. Let's try that again, bud.
Anything goes in the Wild Wild West, and out on the frontier, folks play by a different set of rules.
Oh, God. I'm telling you, you can't play cards without dueling. Welcome to the Wild West.
For some, this way of life screams chaos, but for others, it sings freedom.
Wahoo!
Regardless, civilization is coming, and the West is out of places to roam.
This is like my favorite part.
Long gone are the days of cowboys and outlaws running the show, and all that's left is either red or dead.
Dead.
Red Dead Redemption is one of those once-in-a-decade kind of games that leaves you thinking about it long after you're done.
Whoa. That is gorgeous.
Unfortunately, as many times as I wish I could go back and play it again, replays have just never captured the same magic as my maiden voyage.
Oh God! Oh my God, the train's gonna go over! Oh! Oh my God, that's the most cowboy shit I've done so far!
The tragedy being that you can only experience a game for the first time once. But lucky for us, I've got the perfect game for guinea pig.
Oh my God, I just shot a rabbit! No! I was not cut out for the Wild West.
I'm sending my girlfriend on an adventure through the lingering embers of the Wild West in Red Dead Redemption, where she'll see firsthand all the thrills of being a cowgirl, like capturing bounties, playing cards, and of course everything to do with horses.
I do not let people steal horses around these parts. I'm the only one allowed to liberate the horses.
Not all is fun in games though, as this story is already half told, and my girlfriend has been dropped right in the middle of the mess.
I literally just showed up today.
It turns out, it doesn't matter how fast your horse is, you can't outrun your past. We'll just have to wait and see if she can at least find redemption.
Did I just push this guy? Sorry, sir, I wasn't trying to do that.
So this week's story tells the tale of how I made my girlfriend into the nicest outlaw west of the Mississippi.
Red Dead Redemption.
Red Dead Redemption takes place in 1911. Importantly, not at the height of the Wild West, but near its end.
Why do I feel like the second I walk in there's gonna be a fight? I swear, there's always a saloon fight. I don't know why anyone goes to the saloons.
The light of the open frontier struggles to remain aglow as civilization is snuffing it out. My girlfriend is playing as John Marston, who despite embodying the look of a cowboy, appears a bit out of place in the new world.
I like those pants.
For starters, he doesn't even ride into town on a horse, but on a boat. And then a train.
Choo-choo!
John's a former member of the infamous Vanderland gang. He's turned away from his outlaw life and is doing his best to settle down and live a quiet, simple one with his wife and son on a farm.
I'm not getting involved.
Unfortunately, his actions have finally caught up with him and ended up riding right up to his doorstep.
Now, if I don't capture my former brother in arms, great harm will befall my family.
At the beginning of her story, she and John are confronted by government agents. Edgar Ross has taken John's family into custody as a way of strong-arming him into doing what he wants. He tasked John with hunting down his former gang members and bringing them to justice in order to be reunited with his family.
Oh, I don't like them, apparently.
A former member from the gang named Bill Williamson has been at large in the area around Armadillo, and Ross wants John to deal with him before he'll return his family. Bill is holed up inside of Fort Mercer, and given that its defenses are impenetrable, John opts to march up to the front doors and have a word with his former compadre.
I'm a cowgirl.
It's cool the way Rockstar is able to make players feel the history between characters just from their dialogue alone.
Go away now, John. Don't make me kill you.
Nobody needs to kill anyone, Bill.
With only this small exchange with Bill, my girlfriend could already tell that these two used to get up to some stuff together.
You always did think I was an idiot.
Well, are you?
That ain't fair, Bill.
Bill's hot-headedness suggests some jealousy from back in the day is still burning him up inside.
Well, things are different now, John. Now I'm in charge.
Oh man, you don't get to be in charge by yelling I'm in charge. That is literally mean you are not in charge.
Their conversation ends rather abruptly when John takes a shot square to the chest, which funnily enough, seems like he might have some history with that too.
I just got shot!
Poor kid.
She's rescued by a woman named Bonnie McFarlane.
Oh, it's that girl! Oh my god, from the train!
Introductions with Bonnie serve more or less as the game's tutorial, as it gets our leading lady acquainted with things like herding cattle, riding horses, and so on.
Lasso! Oh my god, she's giving me a lasso! Ah! I'm gonna do some real cowgirling!
Helping around the ranch is how my girlfriend repays her debt for being rescued by the lass, and it's a good opportunity to get acquainted with the area.
Thank you, Mr. Marston. I feel a lot happier someone's along with me.
I feel a lot happier now I got a rifle.
Well, with your trigger itch and my feminine intuition, we should make quite a team.
Damn straight, Bonnie, damn straight.
Bonnie sets her up with a room to stay in, but what's more cowboy than sleeping out under the stars? While she's trying to fall asleep by the campfire, let me have her tell you about today's video sponsor, Manta Sleep.
My boyfriend can sleep literally anywhere, and it drives me crazy because I cannot. No matter how tired I am, if it's too bright, I'm out of luck. I had a partner who likes sleeping with the blinds open because he likes to wake up and watch the sunrise, and you end up with a very grumpy girlfriend every morning. I really don't know how those cowboys did it under the stars, but maybe that's why John always sounds so grumpy too.
Say that again.
Lucky for me, my problem has been cured thanks to my new Manta sleep mask. I actually swore off sleep masks a long time ago because I'm a side sleeper, but this one is something special. It'll work for all you back sleepers as well, but your girl is very particular about how she gets her sleep. They designed it in a way where it never puts any pressure on the eyes and my eyelashes don't get all smushed. It's adjustable so it can even fit on his big head when he needs a nap in the middle of the day. Another huge win is that the mask is breathable, and since I heat up like a furnace at night, I don't have to worry about my face getting sweaty. It's delightfully comfortable and makes sleeping a dream. Now, if only I could get the cat to let me sleep in. Maybe he just needs a sleep mask too. So if you also struggle to sleep in anything other than complete and utter darkness, check out our link below and take advantage of the holiday sale to get 15% off until December 15th. Sweet dreams.
My girlfriend's a bit of a social butterfly and ends up making some friends around town. She meets Lee Johnson, the town's marshal, who's happy to accept some extra help cleaning up the town.
Those are some impressive sideburns.
She lends him a hand here and there, and my girlfriend starts realizing some of the benefits to being an outlaw in the West.
I hear you speak. Suddenly I'm reminded of how some of the people I respected most in my life had a problem with authority.
As the name suggests, outlaws are folks who live outside the law, meaning they're not dictated by the bounds of the government.
He's outside my jurisdiction. He's in the next county.
And that being said, being lawless doesn't make John a wicked man, he still follows a code.
I might have shot the wrong person. Whoops. Sorry, sir.
He gets his hands dirty, sure, but does so in a way he believes is what's right.
I'm turning myself in. That was an accident. That was an accident.
Interactions with the marshal show her why there's this longing for the West, and why people are anxious about it being civilized.
There's no thanks for the public servants, am I right?
We see some of the limitations due to the jurisdiction and red tape that the marshal can't cross, and helps her understand why everyone keeps turning to her to get stuff done.
Oh my god, I can. Can I ride the horse with my victim on?
You just wait till I get loose, mister.
That is so funny. I hogtied this fella and then threw him on the back of my horse.
During her adventures around Armadillo, she's tipped off by the deputy that Nigel West Dickens has been reported missing. She ends up finding him not too far from his stagecoach.
Are you okay, sir?
No, I'm not okay. Do I look like I'm okay?
You look pretty good for a corpse.
But he's been injured, and after chasing off the bandits who did it to him, she brings him to a doctor.
I owe you, sir. And I always pay my debts.
Ooh, it's nice to have him owe me something.
Jesus. I'll be your man for... Let's get you fixed up first. Then we'll decide what you're my man for.
Dickens is a con man who parades around as a man of science, and John isn't a big fan of his antics. He keeps some wild company, and very much prefers to exchange favors rather than offer his services out of the kindness of his heart.
At your service. At my service.
Nice to meet you, Mr. West Dickens.
Despite being a literal snake oil salesman, he's got a plan to help my girlfriend storm Fort Mercer so that she can finally confront Bill.
Tell me more about our plan.
Your plan, dear boy. Your plan.
Unfortunately, Bill catches wind that my girlfriend and John are still alive, and in order to smoke them out, he sends his bandits to raid the town. Among the folks caught up in the raid, Bonnie is kidnapped and she needs rescue.
Where's Bonnie?
I don't know.
What? Where the hell is Bonnie?
Fire. Why?
Why? She hadn't been seen since yesterday afternoon.
What?
You and me, Marshal. Mr. McFarland. I'll get you your daughter back.
Oh my god. Bonnie!
After saving Bonnie and killing most of the bandits, my girlfriend was ready to grab Bill by the horns.
Are you okay? Honey? Oh, good lord.
Fed up with his gang, the marshal decides enough is enough as well and agrees to help my girlfriend put an end to Bill and his goons for good.
Look at the gang.
Dickens proposes using a Trojan horse strategy to deceive the outlaws and allow the group to ambush Fort Mercer.
Ensconce yourself in the back of my wagon, John, so that we can make our grand entrance.
He has John hide inside of his armored-up stagecoach with a machine gun for the attack. Dickens is granted entry to Fort Mercer under the pretense of selling them his cure-all tonic snake oil.
Gentlemen, I bring you wisdom from the east. I have here in this wagon.
I'm about to pop out of the Trojan horse and be like,
ha!
I'm Tarny!
Once they drop their guard, my girlfriend's ready to take the stage. They succeed in taking the fort, but unfortunately Bill is nowhere to be found.
We still can't find Williamson anywhere.
That fool must be hiding.
Apparently he escaped to Mexico the day before.
Sorry about this, John.
So Bill wasn't here.
He's seeking help from Javier Escuella, another former member of the gang, and my girlfriend adds his name to her list.
Javier Escuella. He's gone to see Javier Escuella.
Bill's gone to see Javier Escuella.
We're in Mexico.
So now my girlfriend needs to turn her sights to the south.
I'm going to Mexico.
She and the village drunk take a raft across the border and are promptly ambushed.
I thought you said they loved you over here.
They do.
The lassies do. Oh,
The lassies love you? Oh no.
Clearly she's entering some aggressive territory. Shortly after rolling into town, she has to deal with some rowdy locals.
¿Hablas español?
Gee.
No, sir.
They give her a hard time for not speaking Spanish, even though she does, because John doesn't.
Now, I appreciate the welcome committee, but I'd hate to spoil a beautiful afternoon on such beautiful land, any further unpleasantries. Now, if you'll excuse me.
Holy gringo, I think you're forgetting something. A little taxation.
They make the mistake of taking her hat,
No, not my hat hair. Oh, no, we don't share hats. Lice.
which she just spent the past hour side questing to unlock, and they end up paying dearly for it.
Oh my god, I shot him in the pecker. That's what you get for stealing my hat.
On the topic of clothes, John has a ton of different outfits to unlock, and as per usual, these were our leading lady's favorite collectibles to chase.
Outfits. Marston's typical bounty hunter clothing.
There's a lot to being a cowboy, but she was very specific with how she wanted to partake.
I'm okay. I don't need a duel. Like, that is the cowboying, but that's not the kind of cowboying I'm interested in, you know?
As a general rule, if it didn't involve a horse, she wasn't having it.
I will duel for fashion.
The exception being, of course, if it unlocked her new clothes.
Does anyone here want to duel? I need clothes, but in order to do that, I need a duel. I look amazing. This will be perfect for Mexico.
Coincidentally, the timing of this game coincides with the Mexican Revolution, and consequently, my girlfriend and John unwittingly get involved in the Civil War.
Hello!
What a great way to improve border relations.
Initially, John works with the officials, even though they're clearly corrupt.
Oh my god, they were fucking with me.
His main incentive is that they claim to have info for him on Bill's location.
Welcome to Mexico, amigo.
Oh, okay, thank you.
John does their dirty work, but also ends up making friends with some of the freedom fighters in the process.
So I just was defending a train against rebels, and now I'm gonna be a rebel hitting the army. This is insane.
She meets a fellow American living among the locals named Landon Ricketts, who seems to be the only friendly person in town.
This Ricketts fella is growing on me. See, I saw him initially, and I was like, I feel like I'm gonna like him a lot. And then he was an asshole. But now I see him that he just likes to riff.
He turns her on to a woman named Luisa, who's in love with Reyes, the leader of the rebellion.
Best of luck to both of you, but I need to find 2 men so I can return to America.
No problem. I will help you find those men.
I don't think DeSantis is gonna like
You will
this.
win it.
She liked working with the rebellion and felt sorry that every time she helped the government, she was undermining their efforts.
No, now.
My man and I
Oh,
will finish our
God.
business here. Talk back at Escuella.
This is
Next
not
time I see you, I need some
what I
answers,
wanted to help with.
Captain.
Go get drunk, go get a woman! Enjoy
Good
life!
lord.
My girlfriend ends up playing both sides for quite a while and felt kind of guilty about it, but at the end of the day, she's much less concerned with their politics and a lot more concerned with helping John reunite with his family.
I am not doing Mexico any favors. Good lord, I need to get the hell out of here.
In general, she tried to be friendly and always help when she could, but being an outlaw isn't as easy as it looks.
I'm bringing your cart back, sir.
Look what I've done.
That was flawless. You're very welcome.
She'd hear a scream in the distance and go running to help, but sometimes it seemed like she did more harm than good by trying.
Actually, let's go see if I can afford this property. Be nice to have a house somewhere out here.
What the hell are you doing?
Gracias, cariño.
Yeah.
Ese tipo era muy machista.
You're very welcome, ma'am. Oh, sorry. I'll put the gun away. I was just trying to help.
It turns out that it's much harder to talk to people than horses, so maybe she should just stick to wrangling the animals.
Calmense, caballo. Calmense.
She really doesn't have a stake in this war, and when asked to pick a side, she'll always choose horse.
Be free, horses, be free.
It doesn't matter if you're a revolutionary or an official. My girlfriend is aiming for you, not your steed.
And there are gonna be so many wild horses.
Anytime a horse got caught in the crossfire, my girlfriend would take it personally.
No, the horse!
She's absolved of her guilt for being a double agent when the Mexican army betrays her.
Gracias. For your service. Please.
What the fuck?
And since the revolutionaries come to her rescue, she ends up going all in with them. Viva la novia.
Nice! Who's helping me? Reyes is helping me! I'm running! I'm running! Oh my god! What the hell?
She manages to track down Escuella thanks to the rebellion's connections.
Oh my god!
I see you in there, amigo.
Oh my god, they literally lit the fuse! Okay, I have to jump out when I get close. I have to crash the wagon. The poor horses!
No, Joe.
Ah! That was not... Do not put me in charge of espionage. There we go. Let's go! Okay. I will leave the fighting to the rebels. Escuela, get the hell over here.
Hello, old friend.
Hello, Javier.
It's been a long time.
Hello, brother. It's good to see you.
You left me to die? To save your own skin, and now you expect me to care about you?
You got it all wrong,
Uh-huh.
brother. I've always loved you. Even now.
Yep. The little shit! He just jumped out the window!
After a raid on his location and quick chase, she corners him and interrogates him about Bill.
Come on, after Escuela, after Escuela. We cannot let him get away.
It's over, old friend. I'm taking you in.
There
my
we
brother.
go.
I'll let the others judge it. Where's Bill?
So it turns out that Bill has been hiding out with the government this whole time, and that Colonel Allende has been playing her a fool all along.
Ah!
At this point, my girlfriend is completely over her trip to Mexico and ready to put a stop to all this craziness. She raids their villa with the help of the rebels and essentially overthrows the government.
Oh! Do not let him get out of here! That mofo had Williamson the whole time!
Thought you was tough.
She and Reyes chase Allende and Bill and manage to catch them before they can disappear on the horizon. She wanted to hog tie him like she did with Escuela, but Reyes got a little excited and shot him before she got the chance.
Dumb inbred hick.
All right, John.
I mean, I guess thanks, Reyes. I was trying to lasso him so I could deliver him to the feds.
Either way, she's completed her mission and can finally return home.
Bye, Bill.
When all was said and done, though, my girlfriend was sitting there like she shouldn't have gotten involved in the first place.
Man, I really shouldn't have come here. I just made everything worse.
Looking back at the carnage in her wake, she had no choice but to tip her hat and see herself out.
We made it to the Rio Pequeño. Adios, Mexico.
After returning to Blackwater, she demands to see her wife, but Edgar Ross has other plans for her.
Where's my wife and son?
Yup.
Being well looked after. Well looked after.
I want to see him.
Mr. Ross wants to speak with you. We've had some important developments.
You want me
What?
to take out a gun and blow a fucking hole in your head right here? Right now? You want that?
Mr. Marston.
You want that?
Mr. Marston, I ask you to calm down.
Why? Why? I did what you asked.
I did do
got
what you asked.
Williamson and Escuella. It's over. Stop playing games with me.
Dutch Vanderlinde himself has resurfaced, and now Ross wants her to go out and hunt down her gang's former leader.
We've done this little deal for your freedom in exchange for all your men from your old gang. You gave us Williamson and Escuella. We still don't have Vanderlinde, but now we know where he is.
You want me to go after
Go and shoot
Vanderlyn?
him.
No, sir. I want you to shoot him for me.
This is quite the ask for John Marston, as Dutch practically raised him and took him in when no one else would. Still, if toppling an entire country's aristocracy isn't proof that there's nothing John won't do for his family, I don't know what else we need. Father figure be damned.
Mr. Marston, your wife and son are doing well. Let's both try to ensure things stay that way.
Oh my god, the fucking blackmail.
The goalposts keep moving, but there's not much she can do about it.
What's up, Dickens?
You're alive. Hello, Wes Dickens. Thought you were headed to Peking.
So did I.
So did I.
But now it seems I'm being put under arrest and charged with narcotic possession or some other such nonsense.
Ross, have him release this man.
Why?
Because he's a harmless old fraud, the kind of man that built this country. And because he helped me get Williamson.
Yep.
Did you hear that, officer? The man's a hero. Let him go. Come on, Marston. Moral degeneracy waits for no man. Let's hurry along.
Have a good day, Wes Dickens.
She rescues their informant, an older Native American named nicest, who's concerned that Dutch has been radicalizing the youth from his tribe and using them to build a new gang.
Vanderlyn has attracted a following of young men on the reservation. They are turning to bad things.
Ross instructs John to drop nicest off with Dr. Harold McDougal, a former professor from Yale with a slight substance problem. McDougal has some extremely outdated ideals, at least by our standards.
For a wise man, you are a very stupid man.
I agree with you, Nastus.
Gentlemen, I'm gonna leave you to figure out right from wrong.
Regardless, these two unlikely allies make up her new ragtag team for hunting down Dutch, and it's time she and him get reacquainted.
I decided to be a little fancy. I'm dealing with the feds. I'm in Blackwater. I'm meeting Dutch. He's got to see like I'm out of that life.
She helps McDougal with some of his studies and does some stuff around the area. While surveying the camp, she actually manages to catch a look at Dutch.
So I need to see if Dutch has been here. I don't see any Dutch ovens. I don't see any vans or belts. Oh God!
Unfortunately, he gets a glance at her too.
He sees me! Oh my God! Am I okay? Please tell me he just hit the binocs.
After she recovers, she learns that Nastus has arranged a meeting with some of his tribesmen at a trades post.
Professor, we are not going to waste the life of an animal. You were a dumbass and started shooting at it. We had to finish the job. It's not going to go to waste. See, I really like Nastus.
His goal is to talk some sense into them and bring them back over to his side. And my girlfriend goes along to offer her support. Unfortunately, things take a turn for the worst, and she loses the sane member of her ragtag team.
They just killed Nastus! No!
They killed the stars!
With Nastus gone, John is on the back foot. He goes to let the feds know what happened, but catches wind that Dutch is pulling a heist on the bank and quickly goes to intervene.
An informant just told us some interesting news. Our mutual friend, Mr. Vanderlyn, is about to pay call on his bank manager. What do you say to having a little financial discussion with the fellow?
Dutch hurls insults and tries belittling John, but he and my girlfriend aren't swayed by cutting words.
Oh, it's nice to see you, John.
Hello, Dutch.
There's Dutch.
How's Abigail?
If anything, it'll just make taking him out that much easier when the time comes.
I surrendered, John. You're the master now.
I've been my master since you left me to die.
Mm-hmm.
We all make mistakes, John. I never claimed to be a saint, but equally, I never took you for an errand boy.
Dutch escapes the bank, and the feds are understandably a little fed up with the situation.
What the hell happened in there? This is your fault, Marston.
You got a gun too,
Oh,
Sheriff.
fuck off.
You waited too long.
Next time I'll just shoot the girl.
That's enough. Come on, let's find the bastard.
Oh my god, what a bastard. Let's get after him.
They pretty much blame everything on my girlfriend, go figure, and threaten to take her off the case.
I swear to god, so many people try and like jab John, rile him up. He stays so goddamn calm. He's like so cool.
She heads back to McDougal's hotel room, but Dutch and his gang are feeling bold and meet her there.
Hello, Dutch.
How the hell is Dutch just allowed to be on the streets?
That's what they call 2 for the price of 1 out here.
They want to kill her and the professor just cuz, I guess?
We're gonna kill the both of you.
Why you want to do a thing like that?
Yep.
I don't know. Sport, I guess.
What the hell's wrong with you, Dutch?
Her first order of business is to help McDougal ditch town. Then she can deal with Dutch.
So what are we going to do?
I'm gonna hand you over to him and watch him tear you limb from limb.
What?
Just kidding. We're gonna run across the rooftops. Get back to your ivory tower.
Thank you. Thank you.
The two use the rooftops to make their escape, and she gets the professor on a train back to Yale.
Bye, McDougal. Aww.
The feds might be upset with her, but undeniably they need her help. She teams up with them to storm Dutch's fort and finally put an end to his shenanigans.
Get down from there, Dutch.
You'll never take me alive, John.
I don't think I'm gonna take you alive.
She fights her way up the hill after him and finally corners him on a cliffside near the mountaintop.
Nice.
John. Hello, Dutch. We gotta stop meeting like this.
Sure.
I got a plan, John.
You always got a plan, Dutch.
Uh-huh.
This is a good one.
Dutch knows he's cornered here, despite being a man who never gives up. Regardless, though, he shares some wisdom with her.
When I'm gone, they'll just find another monster. They have to. Because they have to justify their wages.
That's their business.
They'll always need another person to hunt, and once Dutch is out of the picture, they'll just find a new target. Unable to escape justice, Dutch decides to go out on his own terms.
Our time has passed.
Dude! Oh, ow! So Dutch is gone.
With no more outlaws left to hunt down, John has finally finished his mission and can return to his family.
It looks better in the report that way.
Oh,
Where's my family?
Yeah, seriously.
Your wife was killed in a prison riot last week.
What? What?
I'm only joking, dear boy.
Why the
They
fuck
were
would
sent
you
back
joke
to that Scrabble ranch.
about that?
The feds uphold their part of the bargain and reunite John with Abigail and his son Jack.
I know this wasn't easy for you, but I have to say, you've done your country proud.
Good lord.
Exactly. See you around, John. Try to stay out of trouble.
Fuck
Come on,
off.
Archer.
Leave me
Let's
alone.
go find somebody else we can annoy.
This is the reward for all the work she's put in throughout the game.
I'm going home. Wait. Is this my farm?
Abigail!
Abigail!
Jack!
Honey, son, I'm
You
home.
want to hear? Darling.
Oh my god!
This day again.
You no good hillbilly piece of shit!
What?
I thought you was dead! I thought you was dead, John, huh?
Oh, my son's glad I'm home.
Why don't I get to warm and tender embrace?
Consider the fact I ain't put a bullet in your embrace, old man.
Missions change from hunting outlaws to elk.
Oh, Paul, that was so much fun. I can't hardly believe it. Just like in the books.
Yeah. So now you can enjoy your
again
books
soon.
and have a visualization.
It's yours.
John even stops into town to purchase some cattle from Bonnie.
And John, what's she like?
You know. A little bit like you, I guess. She's a woman in a man's world.
She just gave him the biggest eye roll.
Farm life is good and easy, and my girlfriend was sitting there laughing about how she'd play an entire game that was just this.
I want a slower life, damn it. The outlaw life is not for me anymore.
Of course, the good can't last forever, and if one theme has been consistent across the entire game, it's that you can't outrun your past.
Go into the house, lock all the doors. Whatever
What?
happens, don't come outside. You
What's
hear me?
going
Whatever
on?
happens.
Okay.
I trust John's instincts. Oh my god! Don't separate me away.
Locked and your mother inside.
Being the sole remaining member of the Vanderlyn gang, the government now wants John dealt with, and they've brought the battle right to his front steps.
What the hell's going on? The military was freaking here.
John and his old friend Uncle do a hell of a job defending the farm, but the numbers are just too great.
Uncle! Uncle got shot!
Eventually, Uncle takes a lethal hit, and John realizes he has to protect his family.
I just wanted to have a quiet life with my family. The freaking government's coming after us.
No! Uncle!
Uncle died!
He takes Abigail and Jack to the barn and gets them saddled with a horse so they can escape.
Now go.
Bye, family! I should have put them on my horse.
Knowing full well what staying behind means.
Do I have Deadeye?
John Marston's story may end here, but his legacy continues in those who come after.
Oh no! Why are they doing this to me? You guys were supposed to get away! Poor Jack! No!
It's been 3 years since the death of his father, and Jack Marston is back in Blackwater with one thing on his mind.
Jack is dressed like his dad!
You cannot escape your past. John couldn't outrun his, neither could the men he was asked to hunt down. But that rule isn't limited to just outlaws.
Did you work with a man named Edgar Ross?
Oh, we're hunting down Ross. We're getting a little revenge.
The same goes for the ones who orchestrated all of this in the first place.
Mr. Ross, we meet again.
Excuse me. You Edgar Ross? Do I know you?
Oh, you
Give me
do.
Starling, you, sir. I have a message for you. My name is Jack Marston. You knew my father.
Nice.
We're doing a duel! Oh my god! I'm dueling Edgar Ross! Nice! John would be proud. Although then John would wallop in the head and be like, what the hell are you doing following my footsteps?
Jack has fallen right into the life that his father fought so hard to keep him away from. But such is the price for redemption.
Whoa! That was badass! And the cycle continues. Fucking amazing.
I want to extend a massive thank you to our channel members and patrons who voted on having Taryn play Red Dead Redemption. If you're interested in helping choose the next game, or want other cool perks like access to community events and cut content from videos, consider joining us. Extra special thanks goes out to our wonderful sixth wheelers: Daniel Rogers, Gizmo, Isaac Vogan, David Webb, Mace, Albino the Infernape, Gray is Sleepy, Taco Supreme, Parav Skittles, Envy, Cry, Shaneboy1888, and Cerberus. If you're hungry for more boy and girl content, consider following us over on Twitch. We stream 3 days a week and are happy to talk cowboys with you. Hope to see you there. For now, it's time for girlfriend to hang up her hat and stable her horse. But worry not, the West isn't done with her yet.
Yeehaw!